The office door creaked open under my hand, letting in the damp chill of evening. Rain had just stopped, leaving the air thick with the scent of wet earth and the faint, bitter edge of stale coffee from the break room pot. I didn't come here for company. I came because the files wouldn't wait, and in this small town, work was the one thing that didn't ask questions. My heart stayed locked tight, guarded against the isolation that wrapped around everything like barbed wire. That's when I saw her, Lila, my coworker, bent over a stack of reports at the far desk. Her shoulders carried a weight I recognized, the kind that settled heavy in the quiet hours. We were alone, the fluorescence flickering like distant lightning. She looked up, her eyes holding mine a beat too long. Then, her voice came low, almost lost in the hum of the old heater. What does quiet freedom feel like? The words hung there, pulling at something raw. In a town where gossip traveled faster than the wind off the plains, asking that felt like cracking open a door to everything we both kept buried. Our firm sat on the edge of town, a low brick building that blended into the flat stretch of prairie like it was trying to hide. Desks crammed the open space like corrals holding restless cattle, each one a pen for the endless grind of paperwork and client calls. I handled the accounts, numbers that added up neat and clean, unlike the mess of living here. Morning started with the same ritual. Coffee from the communal pot, black and strong enough to cut through the fog of another sleepless night. I'd nod at the others, mostly men in faded flannel, talking about high school football or the latest ranch sale. But my eyes always found Lila across the room. She was the new hire from 6 months back, transferred from some city branch no one asked about. Lila moved through the days like she was measuring each step, her dark hair pulled back tight, blouse buttoned to the collar even in summer heat. I'd catch her quick glances in meetings, the way her fingers twisted a pen when the boss droned on about quotas. After hours, she'd be the first out, keys jingling as she hurried to her truck, headlights cutting through the dusk before anyone could wave her down. We didn't talk much. Our orbits brushed close, passing files in the hall, a murmured thanks over the copier, but never overlapped. Deeper waters stayed uncharted. Small towns like ours had eyes everywhere, and words could twist into rumors that stuck like burrs. I kept my own distance for reasons that ran deeper than caution. 2 years ago, back in a bigger place, I'd let someone in. Sarah, with her easy laugh and promises that crumbled like dry soil under drought. She left for a man who fit the town's idea of normal, and I came here to rebuild, piece by quiet piece. The isolation suited me, or so I told myself. Work filled the hours, the rhythm of keyboard clicks and stapler snaps a steady pulse against the loneliness. Then, the big audit hit. A mountain of client records that demanded overtime. The boss paired us up. Lila on verification, me on cross-checks, saying it was efficient. Suddenly, proximity wasn't optional. We'd huddle in the conference room after everyone else clocked out, papers spread like a map of forgotten trails. Her hands trembled slightly as she passed me documents, ink smudges on her fingertips from hours of sorting. The air grew thick with the scent of aging paper and her faint soap, clean like wind over grass. We'd work in silence mostly, broken by the occasional question about figures or deadlines. But I felt her watching, the weight of unspoken things pressing in. That night, the storm rolled in hard, thunder rumbling like wagon wheels over gravel. Rain lashed the windows, turning the world outside to a gray blur. Power flickered, casting shadows that danced across the walls. We were deep into the files, the clock pushing past 9. Lila set down her pen, rubbing her temples. Her voice came low, like distant thunder echoing off canyon walls. What does quiet freedom feel like? It wasn't casual. It carried the strain of something long held back. I froze, the question hitting like a cold gust. Memories flashed. Sarah's goodbye, the ash taste of betrayal lingering in my throat. In this town, where job security hung by threads woven from whispers and church pew judgments, her words weren't just curiosity. They were a risk, pulling at the fences I'd built around my guarded heart. As her words hung in the dim light, the routine of filing reports fractured into unspoken tension. The next morning, I arrived before the sun crested the horizon. Boots scraping the gravel lot, still slick from the night's rain. The office was empty, the air heavy with the scent of damp concrete and yesterday's coffee grounds. I settled at my desk, files spread like a barrier, determined to rebuild the distance her question had cracked. No more late nights alone with her. I'd engineer the space myself. Early starts, late finishes, paths that didn't cross in the narrow halls. It was safer that way. Safer for the job that kept me fed. Safer for the fragile peace I'd carved in this town, where every glance felt like it could unravel secrets. But memories clawed up unbidden, sharp as eroded canyon walls after a flash flood. Sarah's face haunted the quiet moments, her hand slipping from mine one last time, the dust of our shared life scattering in the wind. I'd come here to mend, to let time wear down the edges like water on stone. Lila's words had stirred that silt, making the old ache throb fresh. What did quiet freedom feel like? To me, it tasted like solitude, like the vast prairie stretching empty under a flat sky. But admitting that meant opening doors I kept bolted shut. In a place like this, where the church steeple loomed over Main Street and family names tied everyone in knots, vulnerability was a luxury I couldn't afford. Not again. I watched her from afar, piecing together the signs of her hidden world. During lunch breaks, when the others clustered around the break room table, swapping stories of tractor repairs and county fairs, Lila sat apart. Her notebook margins filled with faint sketches, curving lines that might have been distant hills or the arc of a river bend, hidden under crossed-out numbers. She'd glance at her phone when she thought no one noticed, thumb hovering before swiping away, face tightening like a rope pulled taut. Small rebellions, those. Acts of creation in the cracks of conformity, much like the wildflowers pushing through cracked asphalt after a storm. The town's gossip filtered in like dust through a screen door. Overheard in the copy room, whispers about that new girl from the city, always so quiet, you know how they are. Or the boss muttering to the senior accountant about unusual behaviors after seeing her truck parked late one evening. Nothing direct, but enough to tighten my gut. This community thrived on the unspoken. Judgments passed over potlucks and PTA meetings. Job security here wasn't just about quotas. It was about fitting the mold, blending into the flat landscape without drawing eyes. Lila's question echoed in my head during those murmurs. Had she heard the same barbs? Was that why her voice had trembled, low as wind through dry grass? My body betrayed me in the tension. Shoulders knotted during morning meetings, the wooden chair creaking under the strain as I avoided her gaze across the table. My pulse quickened near her desk, a thudding rhythm like distant thunder rolling in, forcing me to reroute errands just to skip the brush of her arm in the hall. Self-doubt looped endless. What if I misread her? What if answering pulled us both into the storm, repeating the patterns that had driven me here? The watchful eyes of this town amplified every fear. Neighbors who waved from porches but tallied your every move. Families whose approval meant steady work and a place at the table. I couldn't risk it. Not for a spark that might flicker out, leaving scorched earth. Yet empathy crept in, subtle as morning mist. We'd end up at the same quiet lunches sometimes, picking at sandwiches from the deli down the block, the park bench our neutral ground. No words at first, just the crunch of gravel under our feet as we walked back. But her eyes sought mine across the table, a silent pull, like gravity drawing dust to earth. In those moments, I saw the mirror of my own guarded steps, the way she'd pause before sharing a detail about her weekend drive, voice trailing off as if testing the air. It built a bridge I hadn't meant to cross, her quiet longing echoing my own buried wants. The isolation felt less like armor, more like a shared weight we both carried through the days. A workplace crisis shattered that fragile separation. Days later, the copier groaning to a halt mid-print, papers jamming like a backed-up creek after heavy rain. The boss barked orders, and suddenly we were paired again, shoved into the utility room's close confines to wrestle the machine back to life. The utility room smelled of hot metal and old dust, the copier hulking like a stubborn mule in the corner. Papers spewed from its innards, a tangled mess that mocked our efforts to yank them free. Lila knelt first, her knees pressing into the gritty linoleum, sleeves rolled to her elbows. I joined her, our shoulders brushing in the tight space, the door half shut behind us to muffle the boss's pacing outside. Her breath warmed the side of my neck as she reached for a jammed sheet, close enough that I caught the faint lavender clinging to her collar, mixed with a sharp tang of ink. It cut through the stale air, pulling me in despite the knot in my gut. We tugged in silence at first, fingers grazing over the warm rollers. A stubborn page tore and she cursed under her breath, soft and frustrated. This thing's fighting us harder than a windstorm. Her voice broke the quiet, low enough to stay between us. I nodded, prying at another edge, but the proximity pressed in, the heat from the machine mirroring the flush rising in my chest. Ink smudged her fingers black, streaking her palms like charcoal from a hasty sketch. I handed her a rag from the shelf, our hands meeting, brief, electric. She wiped them slow, eyes on the task, but I felt the shift, the way her body angled toward mine without pulling away. As the jam loosened, words slipped out. The boss's footsteps faded down the hall, leaving us in the hum of the fluorescents. "Town like this," she said, voice dropping, "gets under your skin. All those whispers about who you're seeing, what your family's expecting, ways like storm clouds you can't outrun." I paused, rag twisted in my fist. The pressure she named hit close. My own folks back a county over, their Sunday calls laced with questions about settling down, fitting in. Job whispers, too, the kind that could unravel a steady paycheck if you stepped wrong. I tested the waters, keeping it veiled. Had someone once, from out of town. We kept it quiet, walks in the fields after dark. But secrets build walls. Eventually, they trap you more than protect. She stilled, rag forgotten, her gaze lifting to mine. The eye contact held, longer than polite, her brown eyes steady like earth after rain, searching. The air thickened, heavy with the unsaid, the want flickering there, unspoken but real. "That's how it feels for me," she confessed, voice cracking like dry earth under boot heels. "Suffocating. Family ties me here, the job too. Can't breathe without wondering who's watching, what it'd cost to just be." Her words hung, raw, pulling at the threads of my own buried aches. I'd hidden loves before, the kind that bloomed in stolen moments but withered under scrutiny. Hearing her echo that, in this cramped room, cracked something open. I leaned back against the shelf, the metal cool through my shirt. Her confession settled between us, not light, but shared. The walls I'd built, distance, silence, felt less like shields now, more like fences hemming in the prairie, keeping out the wide sky. We fixed the copier in the end, papers feeding smooth again, but the real jam had cleared elsewhere. As we stood, brushing dust from our clothes, her shoulder lingered near mine a second too long. The pull was there, undeniable, like gravity tugging dust toward the horizon. Days blurred into a rhythm of stolen glances across the desks, her pen pausing when our eyes met, until a late-night deadline trapped us alone once more. The deadline loomed like a summer squall, pulling us back into the conference room after the others had gone. Papers piled high on the table, illuminated by the single lamp's glow, casting long shadows that stretched like fingers across the worn wood. Lila arrived with a thermos tucked under her arm, the metal dented from years of use. "Brought tea," she said, unscrewing the cap. Steam curled up in lazy spirals, carrying the earthy scent of chamomile. Hesitant words taking shape in the warm air. She poured into 2 chipped mugs, handing me one, our fingers brushing just enough to send a quiet jolt through me. We settled into the chairs, the silence between sips comfortable now, laced with the patter of rain resuming outside. She started slow, probing the edges of my past like testing a fence line for weak spots. "You mentioned walks in the fields once. What was that like? Before everything?" Her questions came laced with her own caged longing, voice soft as wind whispering through barbed wire. I sipped the tea, its warmth spreading through my chest, loosening the knots I'd tied so tight. It was freedom in the small things, I said, eyes on the steam fading. No eyes on you, just the ground under your boots and the sky wide open. She nodded, mug cradled close, her gaze steady on the table as if seeing those fields herself. The room felt smaller, the world outside fading to a distant hum. Small-town life crept into our words, metaphors fitting natural as old boots. This place, she murmured, tracing the rim of her mug. Fences keep in more than livestock. They hem you tight, make every step measured. I knew it, bone deep. The gossip winds that carried secrets faster than dust devils across the plains, twisting truths into barbs that stuck. One wrong word at the diner and it rippled out, touching jobs, families, the fragile threads holding life together. We'd both felt those winds, the chill of eyes turning your way, wondering if you fit the straight rows of corn or bent wild like thistle. I described quiet freedoms through rural analogies, the ones that anchored me. Solitary hikes up the ridge behind town, I told her, voice low. Breath coming easy after the climb, no weight but the pack on your back. It's reclaiming space, letting the wind strip away the noise. Her eyes lit then, a flicker like sunlight breaking clouds, but shadowed quick by doubt. She set her mug down, hands folding tight in her lap. Vulnerability spilled out, raw as a fresh-cut trail. I want that. But here? Job loss if they knew. The town's eyes on women like us, different, they call it. Judgments from pews and porches, family pulling you back into line. It's a cage I built myself, but it chokes. The words hung heavy, her shoulders slumping under the admission. I reached to steady her mug before it tipped, our hands meeting accidental, skin warm against the cooling porcelain. She didn't pull away. Laughter broke the tension later, over the mundane absurdities of the office, the boss's endless memos on paperclip usage, or the way the ancient phone system echoed like a canyon call. Remember when it rang during that client meet, blasting his favorite country tune, she said, a chuckle escaping, low and genuine. It vibrated through the air, pulling a smile from me despite the ache. Our hands brushed again as we reached for the same file, lingering a beat, the contact sparking like dry grass to flint. Desire stirred then, physical awareness heightening with every shift. Her laugh's vibration settled in my chest, a steady hum against the quiet. When she leaned in to point at a figure, her gaze unflinching, brown eyes holding mine like earth holding roots, the air thickened. I felt the pull of her nearness, the clean line of her jaw, the way her blouse shifted with her breath. My pulse matched the rain's rhythm outside, urging forward even as caution tugged back. The fences between us frayed, the small-town weights pressing but not breaking us yet. The weight of her unspoken plea built through those nights, culminating in a vulnerable breakdown during a quiet break. The break room stood empty that afternoon. The usual chatter of microwaves and vending machine whirs replaced by the low drone of the fridge. I'd stepped in for a moment's breath, the air thick with the scent of yesterday's burnt toast and fresh rain seeping through a cracked window. Lila followed, door swinging shut behind her with a soft click that echoed too loud. She didn't speak at first, just stood there, arms crossed tight over her chest like she was holding herself together. Her eyes, usually steady, darted to the floor, then back to mine, trembling with the urgency of a dam about to crack. That question, she started, voice low and rough, about quiet freedom. I can't stop thinking on it. What if it's just a dream here? She paced then, 2 steps to the sink, back to the table, her boots scuffing the linoleum like gravel under tires. The flood came in a rush, words tumbling out as if she'd been carrying them uphill too long. If anyone knew, if the boss caught wind or the folks at church started talking, I'd be done. Fired on the spot, no references, no second chances in a town this small. Shunned at the grocery, whispers following me to the gas station. My family's already leaning hard, asking when I'll settle with someone proper, like the expectations are chains I forged myself. Her voice broke on the last, isolation pouring out deeper than my own shadowed corners, a well I'd only skimmed. She stopped, hands gripping the table edge, knuckles white as bleached bone. It's not just the job, it's everything. No place to go without eyes on you, judging what you hide. I'd be more alone than I am now, cut off like a branch snapped in a gale. Empathy surged through me, hot and unbidden, my body leaning in without thought, like wind-bent trees on the ridge seeking the sun's rare warmth. I crossed the space, close enough to feel the heat radiating off her, the faint tremor in her frame. "I've felt that weight," I said, keeping my tone even, grounded as earth after a shake. "The fear of losing the ground under you. But carrying it alone makes it heavier." She looked up then, eyes raw, the brown depths pulling me in like a current under still water. The shared silence grew heavy, pressing down, broken only by our breaths sinking in the quiet. Then it came, her admission slipping free, buried attraction rising like sap through frost-cracked bark. "It's you, the way you move through this place, steady, not bending. I feel it pulling at me, wanting that quiet with you. But the fear, it's a wall I can't climb, not without falling hard." Sarah's ghost flickered then, her shadow crossing my mind, the old ache twisting like barbed wire in my gut. Betrayal's taste lingered, ash on the tongue from promises turned to dust. But Lila's hand found my arm, touch light yet firm, grounding me in the now, her palm warm through my sleeve, fingers curling just enough to anchor. The contact chased the specter back, leaving only the real, the pulse of her nearness thudding in my veins. Tension peaked, our breaths held in unison, the room shrinking around us until it was just skin and air and the weight of wants unspoken. Inches separated our faces, her gaze unflinching now, a plea wrapped in resolve. Words failed me, tangled in the throat like storm-tossed roots. But action whispered promise, my hand rising to trace the line of her jaw, thumb brushing soft skin, decision forming in the space between heartbeats. In the hush following her words, the pull became undeniable, leading to the irreversible step. Impulse overtook me, raw as a sudden gust ripping across the plains. I closed the gap, my hand still on her jaw, thumb tracing the soft curve there. Our lips met, tentative. A brush like the first raindrop testing dry ground. Hers were warm, yielding, slow. The faint taste of chamomile tea lingering from earlier, mixed with the sharp, rain-fresh edge of her fear. It flooded my senses, pulling me deeper. The world narrowing to the press of her mouth against mine. No words, just the quiet urgency building, like thunder gathering, distant but sure. She froze at first, body going still as stone under a storm's approach. Her breath hitched, warm against my cheek, eyes wide when I pulled back a fraction to search them. But then she melted, response coming soft and sure. Her hands rising to clutch my arms like lifelines tossed into a flood-swollen creek. Fingers dug in, not hard but kneading, anchoring us both as the kiss deepened. I felt the shift in her, the tension uncoiling like a rope finally slackened after days of strain. Her lips parted, inviting, the warmth spreading through me like sunlight breaking after endless cloud. We broke apart, gasping, foreheads touching, the break room air thick now with our shared heat. Her eyes held mine, wide and dark as canyon shadows at dusk, the world shifting around us. The fluorescence buzzed brighter overhead, casting her face in harsh relief, every freckle and line etched clear. My heart thudded heavy in my chest, a steady drum against the quiet, matching the rapid beat I felt under my palm where it rested on her collarbone. She leaned into me, body relaxing against the desk edge behind her, the wood creaking faint under the shift. "That," she whispered amid the gasps, voice rough as gravel washed clean. "That's what it feels like. Quiet. Free." I nodded, words caught in my throat, but affirmations spilled anyway, low and sure. "It's yours. We make it." My fingers lingered, tracing the line of her jaw again, down to the pulse fluttering at her neck, sealing the moment, like earth sealing after a seed's buried. Her skin was soft there, warm, the touch grounding us in the hush. Joy surged through me then, bright and unbidden, like wildflowers pushing through cracked soil after the first thaw. Her nearness filled the empty spaces I'd carried, the isolation cracking open to let in this. Her steady gaze, the faint scent of lavender clinging still. The way her breath synced with mine now, easy and deep. But dread clawed at the edges, sharp as barbed wire hidden in tall grass. The door stood half open, the office beyond silent but not empty forever. Footsteps could echo any moment, whispers turning this into fuel for the town's mill. Job security hung fragile, a thread stretched thin over the gossip winds that swept Main Street. Eyes at the diner, judgments from the boss's Sunday sermons, family ties that could snap and leave us adrift. What if someone saw? What if this spark ignited the wrong kind of fire, scorching the ground we'd both need to stand on? The clash twisted in my gut, joy warring with the old caution. But her hand on mine held firm, pulling me back from the brink. We stood there longer, breaths evening out, her head dropping to my shoulder in a quiet surrender. The rain outside had eased to a drizzle, tapping soft against the window like a secret kept. No rush to pull away, just the weight of her against me, solid and real. It was the first taste of that freedom she'd asked about, not loud or wild, but steady, like the ridge standing firm against the wind. Yet the dread lingered, a shadow under the light, reminding me this was just the start. Secrets in a town like ours didn't stay buried easy. They pushed up like roots through concrete. Dawn broke on their secret, weaving caution into every shared shift. The days after that kiss stretched like fence wire pulled taut, holding but ready to snap. We fell into a rhythm of shadows, every glance across the office a risk measured in heartbeats. Mornings, I'd arrive early, coffee in hand, eyes scanning for her truck in the lot. She'd slip in minutes later, our nods casual as passing strangers, but under the conference table during team huddles, her fingers would find mine. They'd interlace, slow, hidden by the drape of the cloth, her skin warm and calloused from gripping pens too tight. The contact grounded me, a quiet anchor amid the boss's drone about quarterly reports, but pulling away when voices rose felt like yanking roots from dry soil. Town gossip spiked then, unrelated rumors swirling like dust kicked up by a passing truck. Overheard in the break room, murmurs about the new barista at the diner acting too friendly with the tourists, or the mayor's niece spotted arm in arm with a woman from out of state. It heightened our guarded dances, bodies tensing at every creak of the door. We'd part quick if footsteps echoed down the hall, her hand slipping from mine like water through fingers, leaving the air cooler. The physical labor of hiding wore on us. Shoulders hiked high during lunch, scanning the parking lot for familiar faces, our steps measured to avoid brushing in the narrow copy room. Restraint tautened our frames, like horses held back from the open range, every near miss a jolt that left us breathless. But joy threaded through the strain, small freedoms blooming in the cracks. Coded notes tucked into files, hers a simple "Ridge at dusk," scrawled in the margin of a balance sheet. Mine a reply etched faint under a total, "Wait for the stars." Her hand's secret squeeze under the desk during dull meetings sent warmth spreading, a pulse of promise amid the fluorescent hum. Late drives home became our escape, my old pickup detouring from the main road to empty fields beyond the town limits. We'd park under the vast sky, engine ticking cool, her head leaning on my shoulder as kisses deepened. Starlit nights wrapped us close, her lips tasting of mint from the thermos tea, hands roaming slow over shirt collars unbuttoned just enough. The prairie stretched silent around us, wind whispering through the grass like approval, her breath quickening against my neck as we traced each other's outlines in the dark. Conversations evolved in those hidden hours, her dreams spilling out like rain filling dry creek beds. "I want out," she'd murmur, fingers tracing patterns on my arm. A place where the air doesn't carry judgments, where I can stand straight without the weight. Escape pulled at her, visions of coastal towns or mountain hollows, far from family expectations and church whispers. I'd share stories of resilient loves, the women who'd carved space in tough ground. My aunt back east, building a life with her partner in a valley that minded its own. Or the quiet pair I'd known in the city, hands clasped open at farmers' markets. "It's not running," I'd say, voice low against her hair. "It's claiming the horizon." Her laughter would come then, soft and rare, vibrating through me like thunder felt in the bones. Fear cycled back relentless, near misses sharpening the edge. Once, a coworker's truck idled too close as we parted in the lot, forcing us to wave separate ways, hearts pounding like hooves on hardpan. Job security dangled fragile, a thread frayed by every rumor that could twist our way. The boss's sidelong looks during reviews, the way town ties bound promotions to fitting in. We'd lie in the truck bed under blankets, her body curled to mine, the chill seeping through as dread whispered of consequences. But her squeeze would tighten, pulling me close, the intimacy growing despite it all. Bodies learned each other in stolen touches, her curve fitting my palm like a tool worn to the hand, breath sinking in the hush. A crisis at work tested their bond, forcing confrontation with external threats. The crisis hit midweek, sharp as a barbed fence catching skin. The boss called me into his office first, door half shut against the hallway hum. He leaned back in his creaky chair, fingers steepled, eyes narrowing like he was sighting a coyote on the ridge. Noticed you and Lila burning the midnight oil a lot lately. Distractions can cost us quotas, you know. Keep it professional. His gaze lingered, heavy with the unspoken, the kind of look that carried the town's undercurrent. I nodded tight, jaw set, but inside the words twisted like wire. Job reviews loomed next month. One wrong nudge, and stability crumbled like dry creek banks. By lunch, the gossip mill churned full, whispers snaking through the break room like prairie dogs popping from burrows. I caught fragments. Senior accountant lettering to the receptionist about, "Those two always together after hours. You hear the stories from the city hires?" Another voice chimed in, low and laced with judgment. "Overtime or something else? Town's small. Secrets don't stay buried." It linked our late nights to scandalous tales, the kind that painted women like us in shadows, unfit for the straight rows of this community. The air thickened, eyes flicking our way during the afternoon huddle, the weight pressing like an oncoming squall. Lila's panic rose that evening, gathering like storm clouds over the flats. We met in the utility room again, door locked this time, her face pale as bleached bone under the bare bulb. "They're talking," she whispered, voice cracking, hands twisting a rag till it frayed. "If it reaches my family or the boss pushes, I can't lose this. Can't breathe if I'm out there alone." Her eyes darted to the door, body coiling to pull back entirely, the fear a wall rebuilding brick by brick. I saw the suffocation closing in, her shoulders hunching like wind-whipped grass. I couldn't let it stand. After shift, I tracked the source, the receptionist, lingering by her desk with a smug tilt. "Heard the chatter," I said, voice low and even, steel threading through. "Our work's clean. Spread that instead of shadows." She blinked, caught, but I held her gaze, unflinching as canyon rock. No yelling, just the quiet weight of truth, enough to make her shift and mumble, "Retreat." Rain started as we headed to the parking lot, fat drops soaking through our jackets, turning gravel to mud. Lila caught up, words bursting heated. "You confronted her? What if it backfires? We should have stayed quiet." Her voice rose over the downpour, defenses cracking like thunder. I turned, water streaming down my face, pulling her under the truck's overhang. "Hiding chokes us more. This town's wind carries everything. Better face it head on." She paced, rain pooling at her boots, the argument stripping us raw, fears spilling like the flood. Then, revelation hit her, resolve hardening like earth after the pour. "You're right. Risk over this cage, I choose us." Her eyes met mine, steady now, the storm in them breaking to clear. Unity formed in the wet, hands clasping, defiant against the downpour, fingers locking tight, water sluicing between but not breaking hold. The storm passes, leaving clearer paths for their shared future. The rain had cleared by morning, leaving the air sharp and clean, puddles reflecting the pale sky like scattered mirrors. We met in the quiet office the next day, the usual bustle muted, as if the town itself held its breath. Lunch came, sandwiches from the deli unwrapped on the break room table, steam rising faint from thermos tea. No one else joined. It was just us, knees brushing under the edge. Her eyes met mine steady, the panic from last night washed away like mud from gravel roads. "We face it together," she said, voice low, hand covering mine brief before pulling back. It was a vow, simple as earth settling after shake. Thieves, muttered protection, our shared silence a shield stronger than walls. I nodded, the weight lifting slight, her touch a promise etched in skin. Hidden spots became our map after that. Bodies exploring in the utility room's dim corners or the shadowed alcove by the files. Touches mapped new territories, slow. Her fingers tracing my collarbone under shirt folds, calloused from pens and now this. Learning the curve of my waist like ridges worn by wind. I'd lean into her, palm flat against her back, feeling ribs rise steady under my hold. No rush, just the quiet discovery. Breaths quickening in the hush, her skin warm as sun-baked soil. Lavender clung to her still, mixing with the dust of papers, pulling me closer each time. We'd part flushed, eyes holding the secret, the office beyond none the wiser. Talk turned long-term in those stolen breaths, voices low against the heater's hum. "We hunt jobs further out," she'd murmur, head on my shoulder in the truck's cab, fields rolling past. Places without chains, where family expectations don't bind like fence wire. Visions built between us, coastal drifts or mountain steadings, lives woven without the town's judgmental pull. I'd share plans, practical as plotting a trail, resumes polished, networks quiet in bigger towns. Her hand would squeeze mine on the gear shift, resolve firming like roots taking hold. No more suffocation. We'd claim space, build steady, away from whispers that could snap job threads or family ties. Emotional payoff came in waves, her laugh breaking free now, full and unshadowed during a quiet drive, echoing off canyon walls like birdsong after storm. It mended my heart's steady rhythm, the old fractures sealing in her nearness, joy replacing ash with earth's rich scent. Open fields replaced fenced desks in my mind, freedom tangible in her embrace, arms wrapping tight under starlight, bodies fitting like puzzle pieces worn smooth by time. No more corrals, just horizon pulling us forward. The final intimate moment sealed it, breaths sinking in afterglow on a blanket spread in the truck bed. Her head nestled close, pulse matching mine, the night air cool but her warmth a constant. We lay tangled, hands linked, the bond solid as ridge rock, whispers fading into quiet certainty. Dawn light filtered through the windshield as we drove out, her head on my shoulder, the town shrinking in the rearview like a fence left behind. Quiet freedom wasn't absence of fear. It was choosing this, her hand in mine, against the wind. If you've hidden your truth in small town shadows, share below. Subscribe for more stories of breaking free.